Karen complained about loud gaming, but she faked the noise herself. The scream of a revving chainsaw ripped through the quiet suburban evening, loud enough to make my teeth rattle. I dropped my controller, heart pounding, as the sound blared again, this time mixed with what sounded like a banshee wailing from a horror flick. My neighbors probably thought I was hosting a death metal concert in my living room, but it was just me, Ethan, a 19-year-old college kid, playing Cybersmith's Battleforge on my ancient console. I lived in a modest duplex on Maple Street, a place where everyone knew everyone's business, whether you liked it or not. My neighbor, Karen Whitmore, was the self-appointed queen of the block, always ready to lecture anyone about lawn maintenance or proper behavior. She'd been after me for weeks, banging on my door to complain about my obnoxious gaming. It's like a war zone in there, she'd shriek, her perfectly manicured nails waving like tiny daggers. I'd apologize, turn down the volume, and double-check my speakers. But it was never enough. Last week, she'd even called the landlord, claiming my noise pollution was ruining her life. I was one strike away from eviction, and I couldn't afford to move. Tonight, though, something felt off. The chainsaw sound wasn't coming from my game. Battleforge had explosions. Sure, but nothing like this. I paused the game, the screen frozen on a pixelated soldier mid-battle, and listened. The noise was coming from outside, specifically from Karen's side of the duplex. I crept to the window, peering through the blinds. Karen's porch light was on, and there she was, standing in her driveway, holding a Bluetooth speaker the size of a brick. She pressed a button, and another ear-splitting chainsaw roar blasted through the night. My jaw dropped. Was she faking it? The next morning, I was bleary-eyed, having barely slept after Karen's late-night sound effects show. I was sipping coffee, trying to focus on my community college assignments, when my phone buzzed with a text from my buddy Marcus, who lived across the street. Yo, Ethan, Karen's at it again. She's telling everyone you're blasting horror movie sounds all night. I nearly choked on my coffee. This wasn't just her usual whining, she was straight up lying to paint me as the neighborhood menace. I decided to confront her. I knocked on her door, my palms sweaty, expecting her to brush me off with her usual holier-than-thou smirk. But when she opened the door, her face was a mask of fake concern. Ethan, I'm so glad you're here, she said, her voice dripping with syrupy pity. I was just about to call the landlord again. Your gaming noises kept me up all night. I have a migraine. Karen, cut the crap, I said, my voice shaking. I heard your speaker last night. You're making those noises yourself. Her eyes widened for a split second before narrowing into slits. How dare you accuse me of lying, she snapped, clutching her pearl necklace like I'd just insulted her entire bloodline. I'm going to the neighborhood watch meeting tonight, and I'll make sure everyone knows what a nuisance you are. The day dragged on, and my stomach churned with dread. The neighborhood watch meeting was a big deal. Maple Street took its community standards seriously, and Karen was a master at rallying the crowd. If she convinced them I was the problem, I'd be out on the street. I needed proof, and fast. I called Marcus, who was always down for a bit of sleuthing. Meet me at my place, I said. We're catching Karen in the act. Marcus showed up with his drone, a cheap model he'd modded to record video. If she's pulling this stunt again, we'll get it on camera, he said, grinning. We set up by my window, the drone hovering just out of sight above Karen's driveway. Sure enough, around 9 p.m., the chainsaw noises started again, followed by what sounded like a zombie apocalypse soundtrack. The drone's camera caught it all: Karen, standing on her porch, fiddling with her speaker, occasionally glancing around to make sure no one was watching. My blood boiled. She wasn't just annoying, she was trying to ruin my life. But then came the twist. As we reviewed the drone footage, Marcus zoomed in on something odd. Karen wasn't alone. A guy in a hoodie was lurking in her backyard, handing her a USB drive. Who's that? I whispered. Marcus squinted at the screen. Dude, that's Tim, the landlord's nephew. He's been crashing at Karen's place sometimes. My mind raced. Was Tim in on this? Was Karen bribing him to get me evicted so they could jack up the rent or move someone else in? The neighborhood watch meeting was held in the community center, a stuffy room packed with folding chairs and nosy neighbors. Karen stood at the front, her voice quivering with crocodile tears as she described how my violent video games were terrorizing the street. I can't sleep. I can't think. And my poor dog is traumatized, she wailed, holding up a photo of her perfectly groomed poodle. The crowd murmured sympathetically, and I felt the walls closing in. I stood up, my heart pounding like a drum. Karen, you're lying, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room went silent. I have proof. I connected my laptop to the projector and played the drone footage. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Karen's image filled the screen, her speaker blaring chainsaw noises. The footage of Tim handing her the USB drive came next, and the room erupted in whispers. Karen's face turned beet red. "This is an invasion of privacy," she shrieked. But the neighbors weren't buying it. Then Tim stood up, his hoodie pulled low over his face. It wasn't her idea. He blurted out, "It was mine." The room froze. Tim admitted he'd been trying to get Ethan evicted to move his buddy into the duplex at a higher rent. Karen, desperate for Tim's approval and maybe a cut of the profits, had gone along with it, staging the noises to frame me. The neighbors were livid. Mrs. Jenkins, a sweet old lady who'd always brought me cookies, stood up and called Karen a disgrace to Maple Street. Others joined in, their voices rising in a chorus of outrage. Karen tried to salvage her reputation, stammering excuses about misunderstandings and stress, but the damage was done. The neighborhood watch voted to file a formal complaint with the landlord, who was mortified to learn his nephew was involved. Tim was kicked out of Karen's place, and the landlord promised to freeze my rent as an apology. Karen, humiliated, stopped showing her face at community events. Rumor had it she was planning to move, unable to handle the sideways glances from neighbors she'd once lorded over. As I walked home that night, the weight of the past weeks lifted. My duplex was safe, my name cleared, and Karen's reign of terror was over. But the victory felt bittersweet. I'd never wanted to humiliate anyone, just to live my life without being targeted. I sat down at my console, the familiar hum of Battle Forge filling the room, and wondered how someone could go so far to ruin another person's life over nothing. What do you think, was Karen's downfall fair? Or did the neighborhood go too far? Share your thoughts. I'm curious to hear where you stand on this.